I always thought I had a good marriage until I heard my husband's voice floating through the open doors at the Design Awards gala that evening. "You're better than her in every way," he was saying, his tone dripping with an affection I hadn't heard in years. "I can't wait to make you my wife." I'm Kara, and that was the moment my world crumbled around me. The Crystal Design Award I'd been holding, my first major industry recognition, slipped from my trembling fingers, shattering on the elegant stone terrace. Through the perfectly framed archway I could see Ethan and Rebecca spring apart like guilty teenagers, my husband and my best friend, illuminated by the strategic outdoor lighting he designed himself, looking at me with matching expressions of horror. Rebecca's voice quavered as she adjusted the custom pendant I'd designed for her birthday last year. "We were just what?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, each word precise as a carefully placed tile. "Planning your wedding?" Earlier that evening we'd attended the Architectural Design Excellence Awards, where Ethan had won for a building I'd helped conceptualize the interior spaces for. He had insisted on bringing Rebecca as our guest, claiming her marketing expertise would help us network. Now I understood why. "You should go inside," Ethan said, his face hardening into that familiar dismissive expression I'd grown to hate, the same one he wore when critiquing my design presentations. "You're making a scene in front of my colleagues." "A scene?" I laughed, the sound harsh in my throat, echoing against the carefully acoustic balanced space. "Like the scene you two have been making behind my back?" Rebecca stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hands raised in surrender, diamond bracelet catching the light, another gift from my husband, I realized with sickening clarity. "Let me explain. It's not what you think," she said, her marketing perfect voice faltering. "How long?" I demanded, stepping over the broken crystal award, my handcrafted Italian heels crunching on the shards. "How long has this been going on?" Neither answered. Their silence filled the space like an uncomfortable void in a poorly designed room. "Kira, be reasonable," Ethan said, using the same condescending tone he'd used last week when I'd shown him my sustainable design concept for the Harrington project. "You know things haven't been working between us. Our aesthetics have been clashing for years." "Things haven't been working?" I repeated, feeling the eyes of other designers and architects on us. "Is that what you tell yourself to justify sleeping with my best friend? You're always focused on these impractical design concepts," he shot back, gesturing dismissively with his award. "Playing designer when you should be focusing on supporting my architectural vision. Rebecca understands what a partner should be." The words struck like a wrecking ball to a load-bearing wall. For years I'd watched him dismiss my designs, belittle my creative vision. Every time I'd suggested implementing my own design concepts, he'd laughed it off. "Stick to selecting fabrics and paint colors," he'd say, patting my hand like I was a design school freshman. "I understand what it takes to make a partnership work," Rebecca added, her voice soft with fake sympathy, the kind she used when rejecting proposals from junior marketers. "Sometimes creative visions just grow apart." My phone buzzed in the pocket of my carefully tailored dress, probably my sister Madeline checking in after leaving the awards ceremony early. I ignored it, focusing instead on the way Ethan's hand had found its way to Rebecca's lower back, protective and possessive like he was presenting his newest acquisition. "You know what's funny?" I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I actually felt guilty for boring you at dinner with my latest sustainable design approach. I was going to apologize for talking too much about biophilic elements and spatial flow concepts. Nobody wants to hear about that stuff at industry events." "Kira," Ethan sighed, clutching his award tighter, "it's embarrassing when you try to talk design with my colleagues." "Embarrassing?" My voice rose, filling the terrace. "You want to talk about embarrassing?" How about the fact that my husband and best friend are planning their wedding while I'm still wearing my ring at your career-defining moment? I could see other designers starting to notice our confrontation. Zoe, Ethan's sister, was pressing against the glass doors, her photographer's instinct clearly catching the drama unfolding. "Keep your voice down," Ethan hissed. "You're being hysterical. This is my night." Hysterical? I stepped closer, my heel crunching on a piece of my shattered award. "I'll show you hysterical." But instead of screaming or throwing things, like they clearly expected, I simply pulled off my wedding ring, the minimalist design he'd insisted on rather than the vintage-inspired piece I'd wanted, and dropped it into Ethan's favorite whiskey glass, still half full, on the terrace table. "Congratulations on your engagement and your award," I said, my voice as cold as polished marble. "I hope you'll be very happy together in your perfectly matched aesthetic." As I turned to walk away, Rebecca called after me, "Kira, wait. We never meant to hurt you. Your design sensibilities are just so different from what Ethan needs right now." I spun back around, the movement precise and controlled. "You know what hurts the most, Rebecca? Last month, when I confided in you about feeling creatively stifled by Ethan, you told me to work harder on complementing his vision. Were you sleeping with him then, or did that come later?" Her silence was answer enough, a blank wall with no design element to break the monotony. "Kira," Ethan started, holding his award like a shield, but I cut him off. "Don't worry about the design community," I said, already heading for the door. "I'm sure you two can entertain them with stories about how my vision isn't bold enough, how I'm just a dreamer who doesn't understand real architecture. That seems to be your specialty, taking credit for others' ideas." At Madeline's apartment 1 week later, "My dearest Kira," it began, each word written in beautiful hand-rendered calligraphy. "I've watched you dim your light for others, especially Ethan. Don't let anyone convince you that your designs are too impractical or that you're not capable. You have my creative vision and your father's determination. Use them both." Tears blurred my vision as I flipped through the pages filled with stunning sketches and notes. "Remember when you were 10 and you redesigned your bedroom? You didn't just rearrange furniture, you created different spatial zones, recruited your sister to help paint, even convinced the neighbors to let you redesign their children's rooms. You transformed enough spaces to win that junior design competition. That's who you are, innovative, determined, unstoppable. Don't let anyone make you forget that." "What's that?" Ethan's voice made me jump. He was standing in the doorway of what had been our bedroom, watching me with the practiced casualness of someone used to evaluating spaces. "Nothing that concerns you anymore," I replied, carefully closing my mother's design journal and tucking it into my portfolio case, alongside the floor plans and color studies he'd never bothered to look at. "Look," he said, stepping closer, his designer watch catching the light, "I know you're hurt, but you have to understand. Rebecca and I, we share the same design aesthetic. She appreciates my architectural vision, doesn't challenge every structural decision like you do." "You mean she doesn't have any creative vision of her own?" I corrected him, standing amid the packed boxes of my design materials and fabric samples. "She's content living in spaces you design without input?" "See? This is exactly what I'm talking about," he gestured expansively, the way he did during client presentations. "You're always pushing boundaries, always wanting to reimagine spaces. It's exhausting when I just need someone to implement my architectural concepts." "You're right," I said, standing up straighter, feeling the weight of my mother's journal in my hands. "I do want more. I want spaces where my design voice is valued, where my creative vision matters. Thank you for showing me I'll never have that with you." Madeline appeared in the doorway, car keys jangling in her hand. "The truck's loaded with your design materials and samples." Ready to go. I nodded, but Ethan blocked the door, leaning against the frame he'd once criticized me for suggesting we replace. We need to discuss the house. I think it's fair if I keep it, since my architectural practice depends on the home office space. Fair? Madeline scoffed, her practical teacher's voice cutting through his pretense. Like how fair it was when you were screwing her best friend while she was designing interiors for your award-winning projects? Get out of my way, Ethan, I said quietly, clutching my portfolio to my chest. Jackson will be in touch about the house and everything else. Your lawyer, he laughed, that familiar condescending laugh that always followed my design presentations. Since when do you have a lawyer? You can barely negotiate a furniture delivery timeline. Since I decided to stop letting you make all my design decisions. I pushed past him, Mom's journal containing the truth of my talent, burning like a talisman in my portfolio. As we drove away, Madeline glanced at me, her eyes concerned behind her practical frames. You okay? No, I admitted, watching our house, with all its compromised design elements that Ethan had insisted on, disappear in the side mirror. But I will be. I pulled out Mom's journal, running my fingers over her detailed sketches for spaces that promoted well-being and connection. I think it's time I started that design studio I've been dreaming about. Really? Madeline's face lit up, the same expression she wore when her students made breakthroughs. What's the first step? I smiled, feeling stronger than I had in days, like a room finally getting natural light after years of heavy drapes. First, we call Heather Lawson. Remember that successful furniture store chain owner Mom used to collaborate with? I think it's time I asked for some design advice. 2 weeks later, Heather's showroom. The key to transformative design isn't just selecting beautiful pieces, Heather said, spreading out material samples on her expansive showroom table. It's seeing potential where others don't, creating spaces that change how people feel and live. 2 weeks had passed since I'd left Ethan, and I'd spent every day absorbing everything Heather could teach me about the business side of design. She'd been my mother's colleague and friend, and when I called, she didn't hesitate to help, her showroom becoming my temporary studio. Look at these spaces, she pointed to photos of neglected historic buildings. Everyone's focused on sleek modern developments, but these older structures, their design opportunities waiting to happen. That's where the old West Side Heritage District is, I said, leaning closer, already envisioning how light could transform the spaces. Exactly. And with the city's new historical preservation initiative, properties with thoughtful, sustainable renovations are going to become showcases. The showroom door opened and my father walked in, his weathered construction worker's hands contrasting with his concerned expression. Kira, what are you doing? Working on designs already? Dad, I replied, not looking up from the material board I was assembling. Heather's helping me start my design studio. A design studio? He sighed heavily, the sound familiar from every time I'd announced a creative decision. Honey, you're going through a divorce. This isn't the time to make impulsive career changes. Victor, Heather interjected, placing a perfectly manicured hand on a sustainable bamboo sample. Your daughter has a natural talent for transformative spaces, just like Catherine did. The mention of my mother made him pause, his fingers absently tracing the grain of the reclaimed wood table. Catherine had years of design experience. And I'm getting mine now, I cut in, pushing forward a portfolio of concepts. I've already identified 3 potential renovation projects that would showcase my sustainable design approach. With what funds, he demanded, the practical construction foreman in him emerging. She's staying with her sister, actually, Heather smiled, sliding over a materials budget. And she secured her first investor, me. Dad's jaw dropped, much like it had when Mom had announced her first major design commission. You're investing in her design concepts? I am. And if you'd stop underestimating your daughter for 5 minutes, you might see what I see, what Catherine always saw, a designer who understands that spaces can transform lives. My phone buzzed, another message from Ethan about collecting his precious architectural models. I ignored it. Show him the concept boards, Heather encouraged, touching my shoulder gently. I pulled out my digital portfolio, opening the presentation I'd been perfecting. These heritage buildings, they're perfect for conversion into multifunctional living spaces. Open concept areas with defined zones, maximizing natural light while respecting the original character. The neighborhood already has an artistic community, and with the right design approach, it could become a landmark district. Dad studied the renderings, his expression softening slightly. Your mother used to talk about adaptive reuse of these buildings. I know, I said quietly, touching a sketch that mirrored my mother's style. I found her old design journals in the boxes I brought from the house. Speaking of the house, Heather interrupted smoothly, Jackson Mills is here to discuss your divorce proceedings. Right on cue, Jackson walked in, leather portfolio in hand, his professional demeanor filling the showroom. Good news, Kira. Given the circumstances of your separation and the clear record of your uncredited design contributions to Ethan's projects, we're in a strong position to negotiate. I don't want to negotiate for design credit, I said firmly, surprising myself with my clarity. I want to sell my interest in the house. Let Ethan buy me out. I need the capital for my first major renovation project. Are you sure? Dad asked, his contractor's eyes surveying my concept boards with new interest. That house has so many of your design elements. All compromised by his architectural vision, I finished with newfound confidence. It's time for a fresh design approach. Jackson nodded, making notes in his leather-bound planner. I'll draft the papers, but there's something else you should know. Ethan and Rebecca have been looking at properties in the Heritage Hill district. My stomach clenched. Heritage Hill was the most prestigious neighborhood in town, where all the historically significant homes stood. Let me guess, I said, running my fingers along a sample of sustainable reclaimed flooring. They want their dream showpiece home? Something to feature in architectural magazines? They've made offers on several landmark properties, Jackson confirmed, adjusting his glasses. All rejected so far. The Historical Society is particular about buyers' renovation intentions. Heather's eyes sparkled as she rearranged some fabric swatches. You know what would be interesting? If someone with genuine restoration vision acquired some key properties in that area for revitalization purposes, of course. I caught her meaning immediately, the designer in me already envisioning the possibilities. Of course. Purely a design opportunity. Kira, Dad warned, his construction experience making him practical. Don't let revenge drive your design decisions. It's not revenge, Dad. It's creative vision. I turned back to the materials board. Besides, why shouldn't I restore properties in Heritage Hill? The publicity would help launch my design studio and sustainable approach. Now you're thinking like a design entrepreneur, Heather grinned, selecting a paint swatch that perfectly matched the Phoenix emblem she'd shown me earlier. Jackson, draw up the papers for our first property acquisition, the old Wilson house on Maple Street. As Jackson worked on his tablet, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Rebecca. Can we talk? Please? There's so much I need to explain about your design sensibilities versus what Ethan needs. I deleted the message without responding, focusing instead on the material samples before me. One more thing, Heather said, pulling out a sleek portfolio. I think you should consider rebranding yourself. New design approach, new identity. She slid a business card across the reclaimed wood table. It read, Phoenix Design, Transformative Spaces Rising from Tradition. Phoenix Design? I tested the words, appreciating the clean typography and subtle gradient colors. I like it. Your mother would be proud, Dad said quietly, and I looked up to see unexpected tears in his eyes as he studied my concept boards. She always said you had vision that others couldn't see. I should have listened. It's not too late, I replied, reaching for his calloused hand across the sustainable materials. Want to hear about my plans for the Wilson House restoration? He pulled up a chair, his builder's eyes now seeing what I saw. Tell me everything. Leaving the design gala, as I walked through the venue, soon to be just another space I'd never visit again, I could hear the murmur of design professionals, see their shocked faces following my exit, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my portfolio case and clutch, and I walked out the grand entrance with my head held high, each step deliberate on the polished marble floor. It wasn't until I was in my car, hands shaking on the leather steering wheel, that I allowed myself to cry, tears blurring the meticulously designed dashboard lights. My phone buzzed again. Madeline's name lighting up the screen. This time I answered it. Madeline, my voice cracked, I need a place to stay tonight. You're not going back there, Madeline declared, pushing a steaming mug of tea in her handcrafted ceramic mug across her kitchen island. You can stay here as long as you need. I've already set up the guest room with proper lighting for your design work. 3 days had passed since the awards gala and I'd barely slept, my mind constantly redesigning my future. My phone was flooded with messages, some from concerned design colleagues, others from Ethan demanding I stop being professionally unreasonable and come home to discuss our aesthetic differences. I have to go back eventually, I said, staring into my tea, watching the light play across its amber surface. At least to get my design portfolios and material samples. Then I'm coming with you. Madeline's tone left no room for argument, the same voice she used with difficult parents at school conferences. We'll go when we know he's at his architecture firm. But when we pulled up to the house later that morning, Ethan's sleek German car was in the driveway. So was Rebecca's white convertible with the custom interior I'd helped her select. Turn around, I said quickly, but Madeline was already parking her practical hatchback. No way, she said, unbuckling her seatbelt. This house showcases your design work too. You have every right to be here. Inside we found them in the living room I had painstakingly designed with balanced proportions and subtle lighting, now surrounded by boxes. Rebecca froze when she saw me, a framed photo of our wedding day, taken in the garden I'd transformed from Ethan's sterile concept, in her perfectly manicured hands. What are you doing? I asked, though the answer was obvious in the disarray of my carefully curated space. Packing up your design stuff, Ethan said, not meeting my eyes, instead focusing on the floor-to-ceiling windows I'd insisted on for proper natural light. I thought it would be easier for the transition. Easier for who? Madeline cut in, her teacher's voice sharp. For you to move your marketing girlfriend into my sister's carefully designed spaces faster? I'm trying to be considerate, he snapped, adjusting his designer glasses. I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing against the acoustic panels I'd selected. Considerate would have been not sleeping with my best friend while I was choosing the perfect furnishings for your award-winning projects. Former best friend, Rebecca corrected quietly, placing the photo on a side table I'd sourced from a sustainable craftsman. You're right, I said, snatching the wedding photo from where she'd misplaced it, disrupting the visual balance of the vignette. My best friend died the moment she decided to betray me and my design sensibilities. Kira, Ethan said, using his reasonable client presentation voice, we need to discuss the property division. I've already talked to my attorney about keeping the house for my home office. Of course you have, I interrupted, always efficient when it comes to claiming credit for spaces I designed. I headed upstairs to our bedroom, now stripped of anything that made it a restful sanctuary. My clothes were already packed in boxes, my design books stacked neatly beside them, categorized by color rather than subject, typical Ethan, missing the point entirely. As I started checking drawers to ensure nothing was missed, I found it. The leather-bound journal from Mom. She'd filled it with designs before she died last year, separate journals for each of us children. I'd never opened mine, too afraid of seeing how much farther I had to go to match her talent. With trembling hands, I broke the wax seal. 6 months later, as I presented my comprehensive renovation concept, I felt stronger than I had in years, every gesture confident as I moved through the 3D renderings. Ethan had always told me my designs were too impractical, but sitting there with Heather's entrepreneurial support, my father's construction expertise, and my mother's design philosophy guiding me, I knew the truth. My vision wasn't too impractical, his was too limited. With that signature, the Wilson House is officially your first renovation project, Jackson announced, sliding the papers across his polished desk. Your first major design acquisition. 6 months had passed, and Phoenix Design was no longer just a concept board. The old historic house was already undergoing careful restoration, with 3 local artisans contracted to create custom elements. I can't believe how quickly you've established your reputation, Madeline said, squeezing my hand as we stood in the partially renovated space, sunlight streaming through the newly restored stained glass. Have you seen the latest Design Quarterly? They're calling you the rising star of sustainable historic renovation. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Heather, check the Design Week announcement now. Madeline grabbed her tablet from her practical tote bag, pulling up the Design Week website. There, standing in front of the most architecturally significant building in Heritage Hill, were Ethan and Rebecca. The historic Westbrook Manor, crown jewel of Heritage Hill District, is finally available for renovation, the article announced. Award-winning architect Ethan Richardson and marketing executive Rebecca Armstrong are among the potential buyers proposing comprehensive redesigns. This structure represents everything we've envisioned as our signature project, Rebecca gushed in the accompanying video, her statement necklace catching the light. It's perfect for showcasing Ethan's architectural philosophy. Close it, I said sharply, my eyes fixed on the building's beautiful but neglected facade. I've heard enough. Are you okay? Madeline asked, studying my expression with her teacher's perceptiveness. I'm fine. I straightened my jacket, made from sustainable fabric by a local designer. Jackson, what do you know about Westbrook Manor? He raised an eyebrow, adjusting his glasses. It's been in the same family for generations. The current owner, Eleanor Westbrook, is looking to sell, but she's extremely particular about buyers. She wants absolute assurance that the property's architectural integrity will be preserved while making it functional for modern life. Interesting. I pulled out my phone, already envisioning how to honor the building's heritage while bringing it into the present. What's her contact information? Eleanor Westbrook is actually a longtime client of Heather's furniture business. I was already dialing Heather. I need a design opportunity. Can you arrange a meeting with Eleanor Westbrook? 2 days later, I sat in Eleanor Westbrook's elegantly designed sitting room, appreciating the perfect balance of historic elements and modern comfort as I sipped tea from hand-painted porcelain cups. I must say, Eleanor said, studying me over her designer reading glasses, when Heather told me about your design philosophy, I was genuinely intrigued. Your thoughtful restoration of the Wilson House is quite impressive, especially your attention to historical lighting fixtures while incorporating sustainable technology. Thank you. I believe in honoring architectural heritage while adapting spaces for contemporary living, I replied, noting how the afternoon light played through the original stained glass windows. Unlike some potential buyers, she sniffed, adjusting an antique silver bracelet, who seem more interested in creating showcase homes for design magazines than understanding a building's soul. You mean Ethan and Rebecca? I kept my voice neutral, running my finger along the rim of my teacup. I know them professionally. Oh, her eyes sharpened with interest, the way a skilled collector spots something valuable. Ethan is my soon-to-be ex-husband. Rebecca was my best friend. They're getting married. Eleanor set down her cup with a decisive clink against the saucer. How absolutely dreadful. And now they want my family home? For what purpose? They want a trophy property, I corrected, a backdrop for their personal brand. I want to preserve a design legacy. I pulled out my carefully prepared portfolio, complete with sustainable materials samples and 3D renderings. I see Westbrook Manor as more than just an architectural showpiece. With thoughtful renovation, the East Wing could become a design education center. The gardens could host community workshops on sustainable landscaping. We could maintain its architectural significance while making it relevant to today's design community. Eleanor's eyes lit up, tracking across my renderings with growing excitement. That's exactly what my grandmother, one of the first female architects in this region, always envisioned for this place. But the cost of such historically sensitive renovations would be covered by my studio. I've already secured funding from investors who believe in design with purpose. She studied me for a long moment, her experienced eyes seeming to take in every detail of my carefully chosen outfit and the passion in my expression. You know, dear, revenge can be a powerful creative motivator. Some of the world's most beautiful spaces were designed to prove someone wrong. This isn't about revenge, I said, then paused, looking at the rendering showing the revitalized central courtyard. Well, not entirely. It's about proving something to myself and the design community. The best revenge often is, she smiled, the light catching her still vibrant eyes. Let's discuss the specifics of your preservation approach. A week later, I was signing another set of papers in Jackson's sleek office when my phone rang. It was Zoe, Ethan's sister, and a talented photographer who had documented many of my early design projects. Is it true? She demanded without preamble. Did you acquire Westbrook Manor? News travels rapidly through design circles. Ethan is absolutely livid. He and Rebecca had already told everyone at the Design Guild they were incorporating it into their portfolio. They shouldn't have counted their landmark buildings before securing the deed, I said dryly, signing the final page with a flourish. He's claiming you only did it to professionally undermine them. No, I corrected, arranging the papers precisely. I did it because it represents a remarkable design opportunity to showcase sustainable historic renovation. Undermining their inflated egos is just a fortunate side effect. After hanging up, I turned to find Madeline grinning, her practical teacher's cardigan contrasting with the contemporary office design. You know they're planning their wedding showcase for next month, right? I heard from my colleague whose daughter works at the venue. And you now own the property they've been featuring in all their promotional materials. I do, I confirmed, tapping my fingers thoughtfully on the acquisition papers. So what comes next? I smiled, envisioning the manor's historically significant architecture and neglected original features. I think it's time Phoenix Design presented a special restoration proposal. You're not planning what I think you are, Jackson interjected, his legal mind clearly calculating potential complications. Oh, but I am. I picked up my custom-designed leather portfolio. They want Westbrook Manor as their showcase. Let's make sure they get exactly what they wish for, just not quite how they imagined it. As we left the office, Madeline linked her arm through mine, her presence steady as always. You know, when you first launched this design studio, I worried you were doing it to prove Ethan wrong. And now I see you're doing it for all the right reasons. You're not just reclaiming your creative voice, you're amplifying it. I thought about the designer I'd been 6 months ago, crushed by betrayal and creative doubt, arranging and rearranging the furniture in Madeline's guest room at 3 a.m. That woman would never have imagined acquiring Westbrook Manor, let alone establishing a thriving design studio with multiple projects. Amplifying my voice, I repeated, smiling at the architectural perfection. I like the sound of that. The design showcase invitation arrived today, Madeline announced, waving an elegantly designed envelope as she walked into my studio at Phoenix Design. They actually had the nerve to send you one? I took the envelope, running my fingers over the letterpress typography and custom paper stock. Ethan Richardson and Rebecca Armstrong request your presence at an exclusive design presentation. Are you going to attend? Madeline asked, perching on the edge of my sustainably sourced desk. Before I could answer, Heather burst in, her characteristic energy filling the carefully lit space. You won't believe what I just heard from my showroom manager. Rebecca's been showing fabric samples at the design center and bragging about their renovation plans. Let me guess, they're still acting as though they're getting Westbrook Manor? Better, Heather grinned, adjusting her statement necklace. They're telling everyone they're in final negotiations with the anonymous preservation enthusiast who acquired it, that's you, and they're confident they'll be announcing their signature project right after their honeymoon. I laughed, the sound echoing pleasantly in the acoustically balanced room. Confident, are they? They have no idea who actually owns it, Madeline realized, her practical mind making the connection. They think some anonymous preservation foundation purchased it. Phoenix Design is a preservation-focused studio, I reminded her, straightening a material sample on my design board. Then turned to Heather. Have their representatives made a formal offer yet? Their agent called this morning. They're offering substantially above market value for renovation rights. I pulled out the presentation folder I'd been meticulously preparing. Perfect timing. Jackson and I have been developing something rather special. What kind of special are we talking about? Madeline asked, adjusting her sensible glasses. Before I could explain, my father walked in, his construction worker's gait solid against the reclaimed wood flooring. Kira, we need to discuss this design showcase situation. His face showed the concern of a parent who'd seen his child hurt before. Dad, just hear me out. He held up his calloused hands. I know they hurt you, professionally and personally, and you have every right to be angry, but this plan of yours, are you absolutely certain it's the right approach? Actually, I said, opening the folder to reveal meticulously drafted plans, it's more than right. It's brilliant in both concept and execution. Jackson helped me draft this renovation contract. It's completely legal, absolutely binding, and requires exacting preservation standards. Heather picked up the document, her designer eyes widening as she scanned the pages. Oh, this is absolutely delicious. The attention to detail is remarkable. What exactly is it? Madeline grabbed the papers, her practical teacher's instinct immediately focusing on the key points. A very special design opportunity, I explained, smoothing out the presentation board. We're going to offer them renovation rights to Westbrook Manor at their asking price, with some very specific preservation conditions. Conditions? Dad looked worried, his construction experience making him cautious. Nothing unreasonable, I assured him, pointing to the architectural renderings, just some carefully worded clauses about historical accuracy, sustainable materials, community access requirements, and maintenance standards. all completely standard in historic preservation projects. And exceptionally expensive to implement properly, Heather added with a knowing smile, running her finger along a cost estimate page. The best part, I continued, highlighting a specific clause: once they sign, they're contractually bound. No deviation from the original architectural elements without substantial penalties. But why would a detail-obsessed architect like Ethan sign without thoroughly reviewing these preservation requirements? Dad asked, his practical builder's mind spotting the trap. Because they're desperate to announce the acquisition before their design showcase, Heather explained, straightening her statement jewelry. They've been telling everyone in the design community they'll be revealing renderings at the event. Their professional reputations won't allow them to admit defeat. Plus, Madeline added, adjusting her glasses as she read through the contract, these historically accurate restoration requirements are embedded within standard preservation language. They'll be so excited about acquiring the landmark property, they'll skim over the specifics. Exactly. I took back the contract, arranging it precisely in its portfolio. They think they're getting their dream showcase project. What they're actually getting is a preservation challenge with strict historical accuracy requirements and exorbitant restoration costs. Kira, Dad sighed, his weathered hands fidgeting with a material sample. I know they hurt you professionally and personally. This isn't about being hurt anymore, Dad. This is about professional accountability. They thought I was too untalented to succeed without Ethan's architecture, too creatively bankrupt to recover from their betrayal. Well, now they'll see exactly what kind of designer I've become. My phone buzzed, a text from Jackson. Formal offer received from E and R, documents prepared as discussed. Awaiting your confirmation. Heather said softly, touching my shoulder, remember, whatever design challenge you create for them, make sure it reflects the professional you want to be. I looked at the design showcase invitation, still sitting on my carefully organized desk, then at the contract in the portfolio before me. Send them the counter offer, I texted back. And Jackson, ensure it arrives during their design preview event tonight. How do you know about their private preview? Madeline asked, raising an eyebrow. Zoe told me. She's still feeling guilty about not recognizing what her brother was doing to my design career. Do you think they'll actually sign? Dad asked, his contractor's skepticism showing. They will, Heather assured him, arranging fabric swatches with practiced precision. People like Ethan and Rebecca care more about appearances and publicity than contractual details. They'll see what they want to see. I picked up the design showcase invitation again, finally breaking the seal. Inside was a handwritten note from Rebecca on custom stationery. I know we can never be creative collaborators again, but I hope someday you'll understand that design partnerships evolve for a reason. You're right, Rebecca, I murmured, running my fingers along the embossed lettering. Everything in design does happen for a reason. I checked the RSVP card, marking will attend with a deliberate flourish of my fountain pen. You're really going to their design showcase? Madeline asked, incredulous, adjusting her practical cardigan. Of course, I smiled, arranging the invitation precisely on my desk. I have to present my restoration vision in person. As my family exchanged worried looks across my meticulously designed studio space, I felt a strange sense of professional calm. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about creative justice. Ethan and Rebecca had tried to erase my design contribution, but instead they'd forced me to establish my own distinctive voice. Trust me, I said, putting the invitation in my portfolio, their design presentation is going to be unforgettable. The ambient music shifted as I walked into the gallery space, wearing a perfectly tailored sustainable silk dress in deep sapphire that complemented the carefully curated exhibition lighting. Heads turned away from the architectural models. Whispers followed like acoustic echoes in a well-designed space. "I can't believe she actually attended," someone murmured near a material display. "Bold professional statement," another replied, adjusting their designer glasses. Zoe intercepted me before I could fully take in the exhibition layout, her photographer's eye immediately assessing my transformation. "Kira, I didn't think you'd really come to their showcase. And miss my ex-husband and ex-best friend presenting their design vision? Wouldn't dream of missing this professional milestone," I replied, noting how the lighting was improperly positioned to highlight the architectural models. "They signed the contract for Westbrook Manor last night," she said, lowering her voice as we passed a particularly pretentious rendering. "Ethan's been insufferable about it in the studio. Keeps talking about how this acquisition validates his architectural approach." I smiled, observing the flaws in his spatial concepts. "Does it really?" Before she could respond, the event coordinators started guiding everyone toward the presentation area. I chose a seat near the back, perfect for observing the entire room without being immediately noticed. Madeline slipped in beside me, her practical presence grounding as always. "You don't have to stay for the whole presentation," I whispered. "Are you kidding?" "I wouldn't miss this design reveal for anything," she replied, settling in to witness architectural justice unfold. The design showcase began with all the visual impact you'd expect from a couple desperate to prove something in the design world. Rebecca glided through the exhibition in a designer outfit that probably cost as much as my first property renovation. Ethan directed attention to his architectural models with the same proprietary pride he'd once shown when presenting our joint projects. Distinguished colleagues, the Design Guild president began the presentation, and I felt Madeline squeeze my hand supportively. "I'm professionally composed," I assured her with a slight nod. And I was. Watching them present their concepts, I felt nothing but a detached sort of professional pity. They looked perfectly matched in their minimalist black attire, both so focused on aesthetic impression, on proving they'd made the right creative partnership. The main presentation was held in the Contemporary Gallery of the city's most exclusive design center. I waited patiently through the preliminaries, through the project history, through their conceptual framework explanation. Timing in design presentations, like in renovation projects, was everything. "Questions?" the moderator called out as Rebecca finished describing their vision for transforming historic spaces for modern luxury living. "We should hear from Kira," someone in the design community suggested. A hush fell over the gallery. Ethan's expression hardened behind his designer frames, but Rebecca, probably thinking she could demonstrate professional magnanimity, smiled and gestured for me to contribute. I rose deliberately, my movement measured and confident. "I'd like to offer some insight on the Westbrook Manor renovation the speakers have been highlighting." "Kira," Ethan warned, adjusting his microphone, but I was already signaling to Jackson, who approached with an elegantly packaged presentation folio. "Please, share this with the audience," I encouraged. "I believe it's relevant to your proposal." Rebecca, perhaps hoping to maintain professional composure, began opening the portfolio. Inside was a framed document, their signed contract for Westbrook Manor, with architectural preservation guidelines and a sustainable materials specification attached. "I don't understand," she said, frowning at the detailed preservation requirements. "Review it," I suggested, particularly the sections regarding historical architectural accuracy, mandatory public educational access, and annual preservation costs. Ethan snatched the frame, his eyes rapidly scanning the document. His expression transformed from professional confidence to indignation to visible alarm. "What exactly is this?" he demanded, architectural authority crumbling. "Your dream project," I replied with professional courtesy, owned by Phoenix Design, my studio. You signed the contract yesterday, remember? So eager to announce the acquisition before your showcase. Rebecca leaned over to examine the document, her perfectly manicured fingers with matching nail polish trembling against the glass. These preservation requirements, these restoration specifications. Precisely, I continued, projecting my voice for the design community to hear. The manor must maintain its complete historical integrity, which means no modernist interventions you're known for. The spaces must be open to community design education programs 3 days weekly. And the preservation costs, well, maintaining historical architectural accuracy isn't exactly budget-friendly. You can't impose these conditions, Ethan stammered, adjusting his designer glasses. Actually, I can and did. You signed the contract with full preservation clauses, legally binding, as your attorney would have advised, had you consulted one before signing. You deliberately misrepresented the terms. Rebecca accused, her marketing expertise failing her. No, you misrepresented yourselves as careful professionals. So desperate to announce this acquisition, you didn't properly review what you were committing to. Murmurs spread through the gallery. I noticed several prominent architects exchanging concerned glances, likely reconsidering collaborations with a design professional who would sign binding documents without thorough review. We'll contest these terms, Ethan threatened, his voice losing its presentation polish. You're welcome to try, I smiled, gathering my sustainable leather portfolio, but every clause meets standard preservation guidelines. Consult with a preservation specialist after you've hired one, that is. I closed my notebook and collected my materials. Congratulations on your design showcase and your historic property project. I'm sure you'll create something meaningful there, within the strict historical preservation guidelines you're now legally bound to follow. As I moved toward the exit, Zoe caught up with me, her camera hanging around her neck. That was professionally devastating, she said, but she was smiling appreciatively. That was restoration ethics, I corrected her, adjusting my sustainable silk scarf. They wanted Westbrook Manor as their signature project. Now they have it, along with all the preservation responsibilities and historical accuracy requirements that come with stewarding architectural heritage. The authentic materials alone will consume their design budget, she realized with widening eyes. Only if they honor the contract rather than cutting corners, I responded with a professional shrug, but then, we already know how thoroughly Ethan reads legal documents. At the gallery entrance, I paused for a final observation. Ethan and Rebecca were huddled with the other presenters, frantically reviewing the contract details on a tablet. Their perfect design showcase had transformed into exactly what the design community needed to see, a stark lesson in professional accountability. Ready to leave? Madeline asked, appearing at my side with her practical tote bag. More than ready, I replied, checking my calendar app. I have a meeting tomorrow with the sustainable material suppliers for the Wilson House renovation. As we exited into the evening air, the echo of Ethan's increasingly agitated voice followed us through the gallery. What exactly do they mean by historically accurate fixtures only? I smiled. Sometimes design integrity needed a little professional enforcement, and I was uniquely qualified to provide it. 3 weeks later, they're filing a complaint with the Preservation Board, Jackson announced, dropping a thick folder of legal documents on my carefully arranged desk 3 weeks after the design showcase, claiming deceptive professional practice. Let them proceed, Heather said from her position by the floor-to-ceiling windows that bathed the studio in natural light. Every preservation specialist in the region has already reviewed that contract. The requirements are standard practice. My phone buzzed, another message from Rebecca. Please, we need to discuss options. The historically accurate materials requirements alone are bankrupting the project budget. They've already missed their first preservation milestone, Jackson continued, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the timeline. The Historical Architecture Society is extremely displeased, Heather added, arranging material samples on the conference table. As is the Neighborhood Heritage Council. The manor was scheduled for its first educational tour yesterday, but they canceled last minute. I was about to respond when my studio door swung open dramatically. Ethan stormed in, his designer glasses slightly askew with anger, Rebecca trailing behind him in last season's attire. "You manipulative design saboteur," he spat, his carefully cultivated professional demeanor completely absent. "Actually," I replied calmly, arranging my sketches into perfect alignment, "you compromised your own professional judgment. I merely provided historically appropriate guidelines." "We can't possibly meet these preservation standards," Rebecca pleaded, her marketing polish fading. "The Preservation Society is demanding immediate restoration of the original moldings. The heritage gardens require specialized historical landscapers. All clearly detailed in the preservation addendum you signed," Jackson interjected, tapping the document with his fountain pen. "A contract you deliberately structured to be professionally impossible." Ethan shouted, his voice bouncing off the acoustically balanced walls. "Impossible?" I stood up, my posture perfect against my ergonomic chair. "Like it was impossible for me to succeed without your architectural backing? Like my design concepts were impossible to implement? That was professional undermining." "No, it's not comparable. You thought I was incapable of establishing my own design studio. You dismissed my creative vision as impractical. Well, guess what? I'm not just running a design practice, I'm directing the studio that owns your dream project." "We'll lose our professional standing," Rebecca whispered, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide her distress. "Like I lost everything?" I turned to her, my movement deliberate. "My marriage, my best friend, my creative reputation, all erased because of your choices." "We made a professional misjudgment," she admitted, adjusting her statement necklace nervously. "We recognize that now. The only misjudgment you made was underestimating my design integrity." I picked up the contract, the sustainable paper crisp and authoritative in my hands. "Every requirement here aligns with standard preservation practice for historically significant architecture. Had you conducted proper due diligence, or consulted a preservation specialist, you'd have understood the commitment you were making." "Just release us from these restrictions," Ethan demanded, architect's ego still intact despite his disheveled appearance. "There's a provision for that," Jackson noted helpfully, Section 23, Paragraph B. Contract termination requires a fee of 3 times the initial agreement value. Ethan's face went as pale as the gallery walls behind him. "That's financially ruinous." "Then I suggest you begin implementing the educational design workshops," I said, straightening a perfectly arranged material board. "The participant fees might offset some of the restoration expenses." "You've demolished our practice," Rebecca said, her marketing voice breaking. "No, you compromised your own professional standards. Your arrogance, your entitlement, your assumption that you could appropriate others' creative work without consequences, that's what undermined your credibility." A movement in the studio reception area caught my attention. My father walked in, followed by Zoe with her camera bag. "What's happening here?" Dad asked, taking in the tense scene with a builder's practical assessment. "Your daughter is destroying our design practice." Ethan exploded, gesturing wildly. "Actually," Zoe cut in, adjusting her camera strap, "you compromised your own professional ethics. I've reviewed the contract. It contains exactly what any responsible steward of architectural heritage should expect. Whose professional loyalty are you maintaining? Ethan demanded of his sister, architectural hubris still evident. The side of design integrity, apparently, she replied, her photographer's eye catching the irony. There is another option, I said thoughtfully. You can transfer the renovation rights. Hope flickered across their faces, but I continued, my voice measured. Due to the historical significance provisions, transfer can only be made to an approved preservation-oriented entity, and currently, the only approved studio is Phoenix Design. At a quarter of what we committed, Ethan realized, finally reading the clause Jackson was indicating with his monogrammed pen. You strategized this entire scenario. I planned to honor architectural heritage, I corrected him, something you never believed I valued appropriately. We'll challenge this through professional arbitration, he threatened, architect's pride wounded. You'll be unsuccessful, Jackson stated confidently. Every requirement aligns with preservation standards, every specification meets historical accuracy guidelines. Your signature appears on each page. Rebecca sank into a sustainably sourced chair, her designer outfit suddenly seeming out of place in the thoughtfully designed space. What options remain? She asked, marketing strategy exhausted. You have 3 choices, I explained, arranging my concept sketches with precision. Maintain the property according to all preservation requirements, terminate the contract for triple the agreed value, or transfer the renovation rights back to Phoenix Design at a reasonable adjustment. Your professional decision. You're taking satisfaction in this, Ethan accused, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. No, I replied with genuine professionalism, I take no pleasure in your distress. I find satisfaction in seeing proper respect given to architectural heritage and design attribution. Let's go, Zoe said to her brother, gesturing toward the door. I'll connect you with a preservation specialist who can properly explain historical renovation standards before you sign any more binding agreements. As they departed, my father turned to me, his weathered hands assessing the material samples on my desk. That was quite a professional boundary you established. Too severe? I asked, genuinely valuing his practical perspective. He shook his head, running his fingers along a sustainable wood sample. No. Some design lessons require experiencing the full weight of responsibility. They'll likely transfer the rights, Heather predicted, arranging color swatches with practiced precision. Their professional egos won't permit them to conduct public education tours for the community they boasted to about their visionary renovation. And when they do, Jackson added, making a note in his leather-bound planner, Phoenix Design will have secured the Westbrook Manor restoration at an advantageous arrangement. I looked through my studio's thoughtfully designed windows at the city skyline, reflecting on my journey from the designer who'd overheard her husband's betrayal at the awards gala. You know what truly matters now? I said, adjusting a material board to perfect alignment. This isn't even about them anymore. It's about what we create next. And what creation comes next? Dad asked, his builder's curiosity evident. I smiled, pulling out my meticulously detailed plans for the Westbrook Design Education Center. The Westbrook Center for Design Innovation, I read from the newly installed reclaimed wood sign, running my fingers over the sustainable metal letters. What would you think of this, Imam? I placed a carefully selected arrangement of native plants beside the sustainable wood benchweed installed in the manor's restored courtyard garden. The morning light filtered through the carefully preserved stained glass windows, illuminating the indigenous flowers with prismatic color. She would have been so proud of this, Dad said, joining me, his contractor's eye appreciating the careful restoration. Especially the Youth Design Education Program. A group of design students waved as they entered through the manor's meticulously restored front entrance, digital portfolios and material samples tucked under their arms. The building that Ethan and Rebecca had wanted to transform into their modernist showcase was now vibrant with creative energy and educational purpose. The Sustainable Materials Committee is ready whenever you are, Heather mentioned, approaching with her carefully organized portfolio. The Wilson House renovation metrics are exceeding expectations. Before I could respond, Madeline rushed over, her practical shoes moving with unusual haste, excitement evident in her typically composed demeanor. You'll never guess who my colleague just spotted at the farmer's market. Who? I asked, adjusting a crooked plant stem. Ethan and Rebecca. They're relocating to a smaller city. Apparently, his new architectural position focuses on basic commercial projects rather than showcase designs. I heard they had to liquidate his sports car collection to cover the contract termination fees for Westbrook Manor, Heather added, straightening her statement jewelry. Are you feeling vindicated now, Kira? Dad asked quietly, his weathered hands testing the sturdiness of the bench he had helped install. I considered the question thoughtfully, watching another group of design students entering the building, their faces eager to learn. I don't find satisfaction in their professional setbacks. I find fulfillment in what we've created here. Speaking of creation, Madeline smiled, her practical nature giving way to excitement. Wait until you see today's Design Quarterly. She pulled out the glossy magazine, and there it was, my portrait alongside photos of the restored spaces. Phoenix Vision. How Kira Bennett revolutionized sustainable historic preservation. The feature is remarkably comprehensive, Heather observed, scanning the article, particularly the section about balancing preservation with community accessibility. A young design student approached, portfolio clutched nervously against her sustainable cotton shirt. Ms. Bennett? My instructor suggested I show you my restoration concepts? She thinks I might qualify for your mentorship program. I'd be delighted to review them, I smiled, gesturing toward the manor. Let's examine them in the light of the East Gallery. The manor's grand formal rooms had been thoughtfully transformed into light-filled studio and exhibition spaces. Local craftspeople's work displayed alongside student projects, the carefully preserved walls now showcasing fresh creative energy. I remember when you first shared your design studio concept, Dad said as we walked through the meticulously restored hallway, his calloused hand touching the original woodwork. I was like Ethan. I didn't believe your vision was practical. I should have had more faith. You recognized the potential eventually, I reminded him. That's what truly matters in design, seeing what something can become. Ms. Bennett, Jackson appeared at the gallery entrance, his professional demeanor perfectly complementing the restored space. The advisory committee is assembled in the renovated library, now our conference center. The committee members waited around the restored table, among them sat Zoe, who had joined Phoenix Design after leaving her brother's architectural practice to pursue documentary photography. Before we begin, she said, adjusting her camera on the table, I should inform everyone that Ethan and Rebecca signed the final transfer papers this morning. Westbrook Manor's renovation rights are now uncontested and completely yours. Excellent, I nodded, arranging my portfolio precisely on the sustainable wood table. Now we can focus on what truly matters. The Wilson House restoration is creating affordable living spaces with historical integrity. The Design Center is providing educational opportunities for the next generation. And Phoenix Design is more influential than ever in sustainable preservation, Heather concluded with deserved pride. After the meeting, I found myself back in the courtyard garden. A young couple was having engagement photos taken by the restored fountain. We'd begun offering the spaces for community events to help fund the design education programs. Excuse me, the bride-to-be called out, are you Kira Bennett, the designer who restored this place? I nodded with a smile. "Thank you for making such a beautiful historic space accessible to everyone," she said, gesturing to the carefully balanced restoration. "We could never experience a space like this if it were a private residence, but this feels like it belongs to all of us." As they returned to their photo session, Madeline joined me on the sustainable wood bench. "Remember when you initially considered this project primarily as professional vindication? It was never just about proving a point," I realized, watching sunlight play through the carefully preserved leaded glass. "It was about demonstrating something essential to myself." "And what discovery was that?" she asked, her teacher's curiosity evident. "That sometimes the most meaningful response to creative erasure isn't about diminishing others, it's about designing something purposeful from the materials they discarded." My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. "I understand now. What we did to your design career was professionally unconscionable, but what you've created with Westbrook Manor, it's transformative. I apologize for not recognizing your vision." I showed the message to Madeline. "Will you respond to her?" she asked, practical as always. "No," I said, returning the phone to my sustainable leather bag. Some design relationships simply reach their natural conclusion. The courtyard garden was filling with people, design students sketching architectural details, community members enjoying the sustainable landscaping, local artisans discussing craft techniques in the dappled light. This was what true design success embodied, not the hollow satisfaction of professional rivalry, but the lasting impact of thoughtful creation. "Ready to return to the studio?" Heather called from the restored archway. "We have that collaborative meeting about integrating design education into the Wilson House project." "Actually," I said, appreciating the perfect natural light in the garden, "let's conduct our discussion here, in this space." As we gathered on the carefully positioned benches, I looked up at the manor's beautifully restored facade, no longer representing what I had lost, but showcasing what I had discovered: my creative voice, my design philosophy, my authentic purpose. With renewed inspiration, I opened my sustainable portfolio containing expansion concepts. Let's explore what we create next. I never thought I'd hear my own son call me baggage, but life has a way of delivering its cruel blows through the people we love most. My name is Vanessa, and for 26 years my world revolved around my son, Nathan. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment was dedicated to giving him the best life possible. I worked as a nursing home coordinator by day and picked up extra shifts at the hospital administration desk on weekends, gave up my dreams of becoming an artist, and poured everything I had into his future. The student loan bills for his computer science degree at that prestigious university still arrive monthly, a constant reminder of the second mortgage I'm paying off. And for the longest time, it felt worth it. That changed the day Heather walked into our lives. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," Nathan said over the phone. His voice carried that nervous excitement I hadn't heard since his first day of high school. "We're coming over for dinner tomorrow. It's my birthday, remember?" Of course I remembered. I'd been planning his favorite meal for weeks. I spent hours preparing his birthday dinner, the lasagna recipe passed down from his grandmother, complete with the homemade sauce that takes all day to simmer. I scrubbed every inch of my small house, painfully aware of how the kitchen cabinets needed updating and the living room furniture had seen better days. I'd even splurged on fresh flowers for the dining room table and stayed up late finishing the hand-knitted sweater I'd been working on for months. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. "Mom, this is Heather," Nathan beamed, his arm wrapped around a striking young woman with perfectly styled hair and designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. My son looked different somehow, his haircut more expensive, his watch definitely new. Heather's smile didn't reach her eyes as they swept over my modest living room. "So nice to finally meet you, Vanessa. Nathan told me so much. The way she said my name, like it was something distasteful, made my stomach clench. She handed me a bottle of wine that I recognized from the top shelf at the liquor store, the kind I'd never allow myself to buy. During dinner, Heather dominated the conversation, talking about her executive position in marketing and her plans to climb the corporate ladder. Daddy's connections have been helpful, of course, but I've really made the position my own, she explained, barely touching the lasagna I'd spent hours making. This is quite homey food, isn't it? She added with a thin smile. Every time I tried to share a story about Nathan's childhood, she'd cut me off with a new topic. Oh, those stories are so dated, she'd say, waving her hand dismissively. Nathan's focused on his future now, aren't you, babe? I watched as my son nodded, avoiding my eyes, clearly embarrassed by the handmade birthday card I'd placed beside his plate. After dinner, I brought out the birthday cake I'd baked from scratch, a triple chocolate layer cake that had always been Nathan's favorite. Oh my, Heather exclaimed with wide eyes, that looks absolutely decadent. I couldn't possibly, I'm watching my figure. She patted Nathan's hand. You shouldn't either, honey. Remember what your trainer said. Before I could respond, she reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small box wrapped in expensive-looking paper. Happy birthday, babe, she said. Nathan unwrapped it to reveal a gleaming luxury watch that must have cost thousands. He looked genuinely shocked. Heather, this is too much. She silenced him with a kiss. Nothing's too good for you. My hand-knitted sweater, still wrapped in simple craft paper, sat untouched at the edge of the table. The final blow came as they were leaving. I was in the kitchen cleaning up when I heard the notification sound from my tablet, which Nathan had set up for me last Christmas. I absently tapped the screen while drying a plate, and Heather's social media page popped up. Nathan must have logged in on my device at some point. A recent post showed a photo of my living room, slightly blurred as if taken secretly, with the caption, visiting the boyfriend's mom. Everything's straight out of 1992. Hashtag country chic, hashtag time travel, hashtag not my future in-law. There were dozens of laughing emoji responses, but what shattered my heart was seeing Nathan's comment, Mom 2.0 upgrade definitely needed. Working on it, followed by a winking emoji. The plate I was drawing slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor just as they were saying goodbye at the front door. I could hear their conversation clearly now. Your mom's kind of stuck in the past, isn't she? Heather's voice carried through the hallway. I mean, all those old stories and outdated pictures everywhere. Don't you think it's time to cut the cord? I waited for Nathan to defend me, to say something, anything. Instead, he laughed. Yeah, I guess she can be a bit much sometimes. More like excess baggage holding you back, Heather said. You're right, Nathan replied. Maybe it is time for some changes. I stood there, hands trembling, staring at the broken pieces of the plate that had been part of a set my mother had given me. 26 years of memories flashed through my mind, midnight feedings when he had colic, the school plays I'd attended by switching shifts, bandaging scraped knees, helping with college applications even though I barely understood the process for those elite schools, the pride that swelled in my chest on graduation day. Every moment I'd chosen him over myself, including the day I withdrew from art school after discovering I was pregnant. My friend Olivia called later that night, as she did every Tuesday. She'd owned the small bookstore downtown for nearly 15 years now, after walking away from a corporate publishing job. You sound off, she said. What happened? I told her everything, my voice breaking when I described finding the social media post. I never thought Nathan would be ashamed of me, Olivia. I knew our house wasn't fancy like Heather's parents' place, but... Olivia's normally warm voice turned cold with anger. After everything you've done for him, Vanessa. Maybe it's time you showed him exactly what he's taking for granted. What do you mean? Document it. Every sacrifice, every penny spent, every dream you put on hold. Make him see what he's throwing away for this shallow girl, who's probably just using him to rebel against her rich daddy. As I lay in bed that night, scrolling through more of Heather's social media posts that mocked my home, my cooking, even my clothes, I felt something beyond hurt beginning to burn inside me. I got up and went to my closet, pushing aside winter coats and reaching far into the back until my fingers found the old art portfolio case I'd kept all these years. Inside were the acceptance letters to art school I'd never attended, the scholarship I'd turned down to work full-time after Marcus left us when Nathan was just 3 years old. There was also a half-finished canvas I'd been working on before pregnancy changed everything, a vibrant landscape that still held promise despite the decades of neglect. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, spreading out these remnants of my former dreams alongside photos of Nathan growing up. Each milestone in his life had meant another piece of myself set aside. I began arranging these pieces into a collage, not just a documentation of sacrifices but a visual story of paths taken and not taken. I worked through the night, adding color to my old sketches, writing notes not just to Nathan but to myself as well. By morning, I had the beginning of something that felt both painful and liberating, a creation that would either bring my son back to me or set us both free. Either way, things were about to change. Heather wanted me gone from Nathan's life? Fine. But first, I would make sure my son understood exactly what he was losing. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply showing someone what they've thrown away. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone and found the business card I'd kept in my wallet for years, the one from the Community Art Center downtown. Hello, is this Riverside Art Center? Do you still offer exhibition space for local artists? It was time to stop being baggage and start being Vanessa again. 3 weeks later, the collage grew more elaborate with each passing day, as did the distance between Nathan and me. 3 weeks had passed since that birthday dinner, and he'd only texted twice, both times to cancel our regular Sunday brunches with excuses about work deadlines and Heather's family obligations. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by photos, sketches, and documentation. Olivia perched on the chair across from me, her reading glasses pushed up on her head as she examined my latest additions to the collage. Look at this, I said, sliding over Nathan's college tuition statements alongside a photo of the small apartment I'd moved us to when he was in high school. I took out a second mortgage to pay for his computer science degree, ate nothing but ramen noodles for 2 years so he could have the latest laptop for his programming projects. I pointed to a sketch I'd just completed, a self-portrait showing me at my kitchen table surrounded by bills, the light in the image focused on a graduation photo of Nathan while my figure remained in shadow. Olivia whistled softly. And now he can't even make time for brunch. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Through the window, I spotted Nathan's sleek car in the driveway with Heather in the passenger seat. My heart sank a little at the unexpected visit. I need to grab some of my old programming textbooks from the basement, Nathan announced as they walked in, barely meeting my eyes. Heather's cousin is starting computer science next semester and might need them. Of course, I replied, quickly gathering my collage materials from the table. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot. We can't stay, Heather cut in, her designer heels clicking sharply against my worn hardwood floors. We have dinner reservations at Chateau Blanc. It's that new French place downtown, impossible to get into, but Daddy knows the owner. Olivia stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. She squared her shoulders, looking every bit the confident small business owner she was. I don't believe we've met. I'm Olivia, Vanessa's friend since college. She extended her hand firmly. Charmed, Heather said, barely touching Olivia's fingers, not sounding charmed at all. She turned to Nathan, checking her designer watch. Baby, the reservation's at 7, and you know how they give away tables if you're even 5 minutes late. I followed them to the basement door, watching as Nathan disappeared down the stairs. Heather stayed behind, examining her perfectly manicured nails with tiny crystals embedded in the polish. You know, she said quietly, glancing around my living room with thinly veiled disdain, it's a bit sad, isn't it? Sitting around with old photos and craft projects all day. She picked up one of my sketches with 2 fingers, as if it might contaminate her. Don't you have any real hobbies? Or friends your own age? The condescension in her voice made my cheeks burn. Before I could respond, shouting erupted from the basement. What do you mean you spent our vacation fund on a car? Nathan's voice carried up the stairs, heavy with shock and anger. It's an investment in our future, Heather snapped back defensively. That beaten-up Honda of yours is embarrassing. What would my father think if he saw his potential new associate driving that thing? Think about appearances, Nathan. Your father? What does he have to do with anything? He's offering you a position at his firm, Nathan. Pierce Hamilton doesn't extend invitations to just anyone, but you need to look the part. That's why I used the money to put a down payment on the BMW. You did what? Nathan's footsteps thundered up the stairs. That money was for our trip to California. We've been planning it for months. California can wait, Heather said, her voice switching to honey sweet as he appeared, her hand immediately reaching to straighten his collar possessively. This is about our future. Don't you want to succeed? Don't you want to be taken seriously in Pierce's world? She lowered her voice, but not enough that I couldn't hear. You know how hard you've worked to overcome your background. I watched my son's face transform from righteous anger to uncertainty, the same expression he'd worn as a child when someone offered him candy he knew he shouldn't take. His eyes darted toward me for just a moment, and I saw embarrassment there. He swallowed hard. I guess you're right, he finally said, his shoulders slumping in defeat. But next time, please talk to me first. We're supposed to be partners. Heather beamed, victorious, standing on tiptoe to kiss his cheek. Of course, baby. Now come on, we'll be late. She practically dragged him to the door. They left without the textbooks, Nathan trailing behind Heather like a lost puppy, not even saying goodbye. Olivia waited until their car disappeared before speaking, her face flushed with indignation. Tell me you got that on tape. I nodded, pulling out my phone and stopping the recording app. Added to the collage documentation, I said, feeling both vindicated and deeply sad. Good, Olivia said, helping me gather the scattered papers and photos that had blown across the table when the front door slammed. But Vanessa, watching this toxic relationship unfold isn't healthy for you. You need to finish this art project and focus on moving forward. Have you called the Riverside Art Center back about that exhibition space? I met with the director yesterday, I admitted, arranging my sketches in order. They're giving me a small corner for next month's community showcase. I haven't displayed my work in decades. What if it's terrible? But you'll be doing something for yourself, Olivia finished, squeezing my shoulder. That's what matters. Olivia picked up an old sketch I'd done of Nathan as a baby, his round face captured in soft pencil strokes. You've got real talent, Ness. It's time to use it. Time to stop being just Nathan's mom and start being Vanessa the artist again. That night, I added the recorded conversation to my collage, integrating it as a QR code that would play the audio when scanned. Beside it, I placed a letter I'd been dreading to write. Dear Nathan, remember when you were 16 and that boy Justin made fun of your secondhand laptop? I told you that sometimes people who claim to care about us can actually be the ones hurting us the most, especially when they make us feel ashamed of who we are or where we come from. I wonder if you remember that conversation. I'm adding this letter to my artwork not to hurt you, but because I love you too much to watch silently as history repeats itself in your relationship with Heather. A text from Nathan interrupted my writing. Sorry about today, Mom. Heather's just stressed about her job performance review. Maybe we can do brunch next Sunday? My treat. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button, feeling the familiar pull to accommodate him, to make things easier. Instead, I opened my browser and checked the Riverside Art Center's workshop schedule. The supply list for next week's portrait class stared back at me: canvas, professional grade brushes, quality paints. Tomorrow, I decided, I would use my grocery money to buy proper art supplies instead of preparing for a Sunday brunch that would likely be canceled again. It was time to paint my own future, even if it meant watching my son make his mistakes from a distance. Sometimes love means stepping back and letting karma take its course. 6 months later, the collage felt substantial in my hands as I walked into the trendy downtown coffee shop where Nathan had agreed to meet me. 6 months of memories, evidence, and hard truths transformed into a vibrant mixed media artwork that told the story of both my sacrifices and my reawakening. Olivia's words from this morning echoed in my head: "You're doing the right thing, Ness. Stay strong." This isn't just about Nathan anymore, it's about you reclaiming your voice. My heart pounded against my ribs as I spotted them at a corner table, Nathan looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit that seemed too stiff for his frame, and Heather scrolling through her phone, perfectly manicured finger flicking impatiently across the screen. They hadn't noticed me yet. I took a deep breath, clutching my artwork more tightly, and approached their table. Nathan. Heather. My voice was steadier than I expected. Heather looked up, her practiced smile dropping instantly. "Oh," she said, not bothering to hide her annoyance. "Nathan didn't mention you were joining us." "I texted him this morning that I had something important to share," I replied, meeting her gaze directly for perhaps the first time. Nathan stood awkwardly, looking caught between worlds. "Mom, I thought we were meeting at 4, not 3:30. "I wanted to be early," I said simply, placing my artwork on the table between us. "I have something to show you both." 6 months later, my phone chimed with a text from Nathan. "Heather's furious I'm not taking the job at her dad's firm. Says I'm throwing away our future." Funny, that's exactly what you showed me in your artwork, isn't it? A rush of emotion filled my chest: validation, relief, hope. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I picked up my brush and faced my latest canvas, a phoenix rising from ashes, its wings spread wide and proud against a vibrant orange and gold background. I added a touch more crimson to the heart of the flames. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better, growing stronger, and helping others do the same. As I continued to paint, a smile spread across my face, each brushstroke feeling like another step forward in my own renaissance. The community art showcase last month had given me more than just validation as an artist, it had connected me with others seeking their own rebirth. Community Canvas, the hand-painted sign gleamed in the morning sunlight as local reporters gathered outside our newly renovated space in the Riverside Community Center. 6 months of dedicated work had transformed the old forgotten room into something truly special, a vibrant hub for creativity and healing. Miss Vanessa, a journalist from the local paper, approached, notepad in hand. "Your story has inspired dozens in our community. Did you expect this response when you first picked up your paintbrush again after all these years?" Before I could answer, Olivia appeared at my side, looking professional and proud in her vintage blazer. Let's save the questions for after the official opening inside. We have a ribbon to cut and artwork to celebrate. The main gallery space buzzed with energy. My paintings lined one wall, the mother bird, the phoenix, and several others that told my journey. But it was the community space that made me proudest. The circle of easels set up for classes, the cozy corner with comfortable chairs for discussion groups, and the small but well-stocked art supply library we'd created through donations and community support. Mom. I turned to find Nathan standing awkwardly by the entrance, holding something wrapped in simple brown paper. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a casual button-down shirt that looked more like the son I remembered. "You came," I said, genuinely surprised. He hadn't confirmed he'd attend the opening. "Alone," he added quickly, his eyes meeting mine directly. "Heather and I, we're taking a break." Actually, it's more than a break. Before I could respond, a reporter from the local news approached us. "Could we get an interview with both of you? The mother-son story behind this community project sounds fascinating." Nathan shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair. "I don't deserve to be part of the story." "Actually," I said, gently touching his arm, "maybe you do. Our experience might help others recognize unhealthy relationships before they lose themselves in someone else's expectations." The reporter positioned us near my mother bird, painting the piece that showed a mature bird watching her fledgling take flight. "So Nathan, how does it feel seeing your mother's artistic success after all these years?" He glanced at me, his expression a complex mixture of shame and pride. "Honestly," he said, his voice steadier than I expected, "I was so caught up in someone else's vision of success, big houses, expensive cars, prestigious jobs, that I completely failed to see the real strength and creativity that was right in front of me my whole life." "And what was the breaking point?" the reporter pressed. Nathan swallowed hard. "Finding out my girlfriend had been secretly taking photos of my mom's home and clothes to mock online with her friends." His voice cracked with emotion. "She thought it was funny to ridicule someone who'd sacrificed everything for her child. I finally saw how incredibly cruel that was." The reporter turned to me. "And you had no idea about these social media posts?" "Actually," I smiled sadly, "they became part of my artwork. I incorporated screenshots of them into my collage pieces. Sometimes people reveal their true selves when they think no one's watching, and art can transform even painful truths into something meaningful." After the interview, Nathan handed me the wrapped package, his hand slightly shaking. "I found this in Heather's cloud storage when I was moving my files off our shared account. She'd been planning to make it into some kind of hilarious slideshow for her father's charity gala. Inside was a printed collection of photos she'd taken of me, crying in my kitchen, wearing my old painting clothes, sleeping on the couch after an exhausting shift. Intimate, vulnerable moments captured with cruelty in mind. Instead of shame, I felt a strange sense of triumph. "These are perfect," I declared, already envisioning how I could incorporate them into my next mixed media piece. Every authentic story needs to acknowledge its painful chapters. The day flew by in a whirlwind of conversations, impromptu art demonstrations, and emotional moments as community members shared their own stories of lost dreams and new beginnings. By evening, only a few visitors remained, including a young mother still clutching a sketchbook to her chest. "I haven't drawn since my daughter was born 3 years ago," she admitted quietly. "My husband says it's selfish to want time for art when I should be focused on our family." "I used to believe that too," I said, leading her to one of the easels. "Let's prove him wrong together." Olivia joined us, carrying registration forms for upcoming classes. "First workshop is on the house," she winked as the woman began tentatively sketching. tears rolling down her cheeks as the pencil moved across paper for the first time in years. Nathan touched my arm gently. "Mom, there's something else you should know." He looked nervous, lowering his voice. "Heather's been telling people you're having some kind of mental breakdown, that this whole art program is just a symptom. She's trying to get her father's law firm to look into ways to discredit the program." "Let her try," Olivia snapped, overhearing as she arranged brochures. "We've got dozens of community members ready to speak about how this program has changed their lives. Plus, the local media loves Vanessa's story of rediscovery." "It's not just that," Nathan continued, his expression growing more troubled. "She's been spreading rumors about the program's finances, suggesting you're misusing the community grant money." A commotion at the entrance cut him off. Heather stormed in, designer heels clicking aggressively against the floor. "How dare you turn him against me?" she shrieked, pointing dramatically at me while several visitors turned to stare. "All this attention for your little craft project, this fake empowerment nonsense. It's pathetic." The young mother with the sketchbook stood up, clutching her drawing protectively. "I think you need to leave. This is a community space." "Oh, shut up," Heather snapped, her perfectly made-up face contorted with rage. "You're all just sad, desperate women with nothing better to do." "Security," Olivia called calmly into her phone. "Community room, please." Heather's face flushed red. "You'll be hearing from my father's lawyers. I'll make sure everyone knows what a fraud this whole program is." Actually, Nathan stepped forward, his phone visibly recording in his hand. "I think you've done enough talking, Heather." As the community center's security guard escorted a still shouting Heather out, I turned to the young mother, who looked shaken by the confrontation. "And that," I said, picking up a brush and handing her one too, "is exactly why we created this space. Sometimes art is the most powerful response to chaos. Shall we paint?" She smiled, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "Yes. Yes, please." Later, watching her create her first painting in years, a simple but powerful image of a woman breaking through a wall, I realized something profound. My journey hadn't been about exposing Heather, or even about my own artistic rebirth. It was about creating a space where others could reclaim their creativity and power, one brushstroke at a time. Nathan stayed until closing, helping clean up paint supplies and listening intently to community members' stories. With each shared experience, I watched understanding dawn in his eyes, the same understanding that had ultimately set me free. Monday morning, turn on the news. Olivia's voice blasted through my phone early Monday morning, startling me awake. "Channel 7, now." I fumbled for the remote, nearly spilling my coffee in the process. The screen flickered to life, showing Heather being escorted from her father's prestigious downtown law office, looking decidedly less polished than usual. Allegations of marketing fraud and client privacy violations, the reporter announced with practiced gravity. Sources say Heather Hamilton had been using confidential client information to bolster her social media marketing profile, including several nonprofit organizations whose sensitive data was compromised. The investigation began after suspicious activity was noted in accounts belonging to. My phone buzzed with another call. "Nathan." I switched to speaker. "Mom, are you watching?" "I am." "Are you okay?" My heart raced with concern for him. She tried to frame me, his voice shook with barely controlled emotion. "Used my login credentials to access client data. If I hadn't discovered those files on her laptop when I was getting my things." "Wait," I sat up straighter, clutching my coffee mug. "You're the one who reported her?" "After I saw what she was planning to do to your community art program, yes. I couldn't let her hurt anyone else." The doorbell rang, interrupting us. I opened it to find Olivia still in her pajamas and robe, tablet in hand, her hair uncombed. "It's everywhere," she announced triumphantly, striding into my living room. "Social media is exploding with the story. Pierce Hamilton is making a public statement distancing the firm from his daughter. And look at this." She thrust the tablet at me. On screen was Heather's private social media account, leaked screenshots showing years of manipulative behavior, including her detailed plans to discredit me and the Community Canvas program. "The karma is absolutely delicious," Olivia grinned, helping herself to coffee. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. People from the art program were sharing supportive messages, defending our work. Local businesses were reaching out about possible partnerships. The community newspaper wanted an extended feature. "Mom," Nathan was still on speaker. "Can I come over? There's something important I need to show you." 30 minutes later, Nathan arrived carrying a familiar leather portfolio case, the one I'd given him months ago, containing my collage. "I've been adding to it," he said, opening it carefully on my kitchen table. "Everything Heather did, everything I should have seen sooner, but also this." He pulled out a stack of papers, applications to local tech companies, lease agreements for a modest apartment just 10 minutes from my house, and a volunteer registration form for the Community Canvas program. "I'm not taking Pierce's job offer," he declared with newfound confidence in his voice. "I want to help build something meaningful, like you did." He hesitated, his eyes meeting mine with vulnerability I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "And I want to help other people recognize toxic relationships before they lose themselves like I almost did." Olivia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, not even trying to hide her tears. "I'll get the coffee started. Sounds like we've got a lot to discuss." My phone rang again, the local newspaper. "Miss Vanessa, we're running a feature on Heather Hamilton's professional downfall and its connection to your community art program. Would you care to comment?" I looked at Nathan, who nodded encouragingly. "Actually," I said, feeling surprisingly calm, "I would, but not about Heather. I'd rather talk about recognition, recognizing your own worth, recognizing unhealthy relationships, and recognizing when it's time to stand up for yourself and others through creative expression." The interview lasted nearly an hour. By the end, the reporter was asking thoughtful questions about our art workshops and how community members could support the program. "One last question," she said. "What would you say to Heather now, after everything that's happened?" I thought for a moment, then answered truthfully, "Thank you." I could almost hear her surprise through the phone. Without her actions, I might never have reclaimed my artist's soul. Sometimes our greatest adversaries become our greatest catalysts for change. After hanging up, I found Nathan and Olivia had spread the volunteer sign-up forms across the table, already brainstorming new program ideas. "We could start a support group," Nathan suggested, his engineering mind already organizing the logistics. 4 people recovering from manipulative relationships. I could share my experience and what I've learned. "And we could use that empty corner space," Olivia added enthusiastically, "perfect for discussion circles and small group sharing. I know some therapists through the bookstore who might volunteer their time." My phone pinged with a news alert: Heather Hamilton faces additional charges, privacy violations, and online harassment. New evidence surfaces from multiple victims. "Mom," Nathan looked up from the papers, concern etched on his face, "are you okay with all this?" I walked to my easel by the window, where a new painting was taking shape, a garden of vibrant wildflowers pushing up through cracked concrete. "I'm better than okay," I replied honestly, picking up my brush. For the first time in decades, everything feels exactly as it should be. Olivia raised her coffee mug. "To karma finally doing its job. To new beginnings," Nathan added, his voice lighter than I'd heard in months. To truth, I said, making a confident stroke of yellow across my canvas. It always finds its way to the surface, one way or another. As I continued painting, Nathan and Olivia kept planning, their voices filled with purpose and possibility. Outside, I could see a news van parked across the street, probably waiting for comments about Heather's legal troubles. But in here, in this space filled with art supplies, fresh coffee, and healing connections, none of that circus mattered. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from the young mother who'd been at our program opening. Just got commissioned to paint a mural for the children's library. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to reclaim your dreams. I smiled, adding another stroke of vibrant purple to my painting. Sometimes the best revenge isn't watching your detractors fall, it's rising so high that their actions become nothing more than footnotes in your success story. 2 months later, she's asking to see you, Nathan said, pacing nervously around my small studio space at the community center. Heather. Her lawyer says she wants to apologize in person before her sentencing hearing. I set down my paintbrush, studying my son's troubled face. 2 months had passed since Heather's arrest, and the media frenzy had finally started to die down. And what do you think about that request? I asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. I think she's manipulating again. He stopped pacing, running his hands through his hair in frustration. The sentencing is next week. She's obviously hoping for character statements to reduce whatever penalties she's facing. Olivia burst through the door, waving the local newspaper. Have you seen this outrageous piece? Pierce Hamilton is giving interviews claiming Heather has an anxiety disorder, trying to get public sympathy to reduce her charges. Of course he is, I sighed, turning back to my canvas, a woman breaking free from transparent chains that reflected light like glass. What do you think, Olivia? Should I meet with her? Only if you're recording every second of that conversation, Olivia declared emphatically, and I'm definitely coming with you as a witness. The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon in Heather's lawyer's downtown office. She sat across the polished conference table, her designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and knee-length skirt, her makeup minimal, hair pulled back in a modest ponytail. She looked younger, almost vulnerable without her usual armor of perfection. Vanessa, she began, her voice trembling slightly, I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry you got caught? Olivia asked sharply before I could respond. Heather's lawyer, an expensive-looking man in his 50s, shifted uncomfortably. Miss Hamilton has prepared a formal statement of apology. No prepared statements, I interrupted firmly. Just honest truth. That's all I'm interested in hearing. Heather's perfectly crafted facade cracked visibly. Truth? Her carefully plucked eyebrows furrowed. Fine. I was jealous of you. You had everything I secretly wanted, genuine respect, unconditional love, actual purpose in life. I thought if I could prove you were pathetic and outdated, it would make me feel better about myself, more secure. And did mocking me accomplish that? I asked quietly. No. Tears spilled down her cheeks, smudging her minimal makeup. It made me worse. Meaner, more desperate for validation. When I saw your art program helping people and bringing them joy, I couldn't stand it. Their happiness felt like a personal attack on everything I'd built my identity around. So you tried to destroy something positive because it threatened your worldview? Yes, she wiped her eyes with a tissue, but you just kept succeeding despite my efforts. Every attack seemed to make you stronger somehow. And now? She gestured helplessly at her surroundings, the sterile conference room feeling like a cage. Now you're facing serious consequences. I finished for her, and you want my help to avoid them. I want a chance to change, she whispered, leaning forward. Like you did. I pulled out an envelope I'd prepared, sliding it across the polished table. Read it. Heather's perfectly manicured hand trembled slightly as she opened the letter. Dear Heather, I'm willing to speak at your sentencing hearing, but not to request leniency. Instead, I'll tell the truth about your actions, their impact, and what I believe you genuinely need right now. You need consequences. You need time to reflect without the distractions of social media and appearances. Most importantly, you need to understand that true strength isn't about tearing others down to elevate yourself. If you're serious about changing, here's my offer. While you face whatever consequences the court decides, take classes, get counseling, document your journey not as a victim, but as someone who chose a destructive path and now wants to find a better one. When you've completed your legal obligations, if you've done the internal work required, there will be a place for you at Community Canvas, not as a participant, but initially as a cautionary voice, and eventually, perhaps, as living proof that people can truly change when they confront their own actions. The choice to begin that journey is entirely yours. Vanessa Heather stared at the letter for a long moment, her expression shifting from surprise to something more complex. You'd really give me a chance to be part of your program after everything I did to you? Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild their life, I said, standing with quiet confidence. But first, they need to face what they've torn down and take responsibility for it. Outside the office building, Olivia grabbed my arm as we walked to her car. Are you absolutely sure about this offer? She tried to destroy everything you've built. No, I admitted honestly, feeling the spring sunshine warm on my face, but redemption has to start somewhere, and sometimes the people who've been most lost are the ones who can eventually help others find their way. My phone buzzed a text from Nathan. How did the meeting with Heather go? Come to the community center, I replied. There's something meaningful I want to show you. An hour later, Nathan stood in our newest exhibition space, surrounded by artwork created by participants from our various workshops. In the center of the display was my latest piece, a mirror carefully cracked into geometric pieces, each fragment reflecting a different aspect of healing, some pieces tinted with color, others clear, all arranged in a pattern that created something more beautiful than the original unbroken surface. Heather asked for help, I told him quietly. I offered her a path forward, not a free pardon. You're a better person than I am, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can ever truly forgive her for what she did to both of us. Forgiveness isn't about erasing or forgetting the past, I replied, gently touching the mirror's handcrafted wooden frame. It's about consciously choosing your future instead of remaining trapped by resentment. Olivia appeared with steaming coffee mugs and a stack of colorful registration forms for our newest workshop series, Breaking Free Creative Recovery from Toxic Relationships. Speaking of futures, she smiled warmly. We've already got 15 people signed up for the first session. Nathan picked up a clean brush from my nearby easel. Do you need any help with the beginners classes? My technical skills are pretty basic, but I could assist with setup and materials. Always, I said, feeling a rush of joy as I watched my son dip the brush in deep blue paint, making his first tentative stroke on a blank canvas. Sometimes confronting your demons isn't about winning or losing. It's about standing firmly in your truth while offering others the chance to discover theirs. As I watched Nathan experiment with blending colors, I realized that healing, like art itself, is never really finished or perfect. It just keeps evolving and developing, one brush stroke at a time. 6 months later, the community center gallery buzzed with excitement as visitors moved between the displayed artworks, each piece telling a personal story of transformation. My original collage lay carefully mounted in a simple frame, a powerful reminder of where this journey began. Mom. Nathan called from across the room, looking more relaxed and authentic than I'd seen him in years. They're ready for the ceremony to begin. I made my way through the crowd, pausing briefly to squeeze Olivia's hand. She was already crying, dabbing at her eyes with a colorful handkerchief from her bookstore. "Don't you dare make me cry too," I warned with a smile. "I still have to give a coherent speech." Community Canvas's first completion ceremony was about to begin. 16 participants stood ready to receive their certificates, some for completing the art therapy program, others for workshop leadership training, still others for community outreach initiatives. Each face reflected its own unique story of breaking free and finding personal strength. Before we begin, I addressed the gathered crowd. "I want to share something that arrived in my email this morning." I opened a printed message from the County Detention Center's rehabilitation program. "Dear Vanessa, today marks 6 months since my sentencing. I've completed the counseling programs you suggested and recently started volunteering with the art therapy initiative here. The other participants sometimes call me the cautionary tale, but increasingly, they're seeing me as someone on a parallel journey. I understand now what you meant about facing what I've torn down before trying to build something new. Every day I witness the damage that toxic behavior causes to both victims and perpetrators. Every day I make the conscious choice to be different, to be better. Thank you for showing me that true change isn't about destruction or public shamming, but about honest reconstruction from the inside out." Interested murmurs rippled through the audience. I continued, my voice growing stronger as I spoke from the heart. Our Community Canvas program was born from personal pain, but it has flourished through collective hope. Each person receiving a certificate today has faced their own version of Heather, whether it was another person who undermined them, society's limiting expectations, or their own internal self-doubt. The program graduates stood a little straighter, many clasping hands in solidarity. But more importantly, I gestured to Nathan, who stepped forward carrying a stack of sealed envelopes. Each graduate is leaving with something crucial, a tangible future path. Nathan began distributing the envelopes with genuine warmth. Inside you'll find various opportunities, from exhibition invitations to teaching positions at local schools, from small business guidance to community project grants, each one matched to your unique skills and goals. Community Canvas isn't just about healing past wounds, it's about building tomorrow together. Olivia joined us at the front, carrying a large covered canvas. "We have one more surprise to share. Vanessa, would you do the honors?" I carefully unveiled the painting, a collaborative piece created by all 16 program graduates, with spaces intentionally left blank around the edges. "This community mural will hang permanently in our entrance," I explained, emotion making my voice catch slightly. "Each future graduate will add their own mark to it, creating an ever-growing testament to personal and collective transformation." The first graduate approached the podium, tears streaming freely down her face. "I was that young mother clutching a sketchbook on opening day," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Now I'm designing murals for the children's library and opening my own small gallery in the fall." One by one, they shared their stories. A former account executive who'd lost her identity in corporate expectations, a grandmother in her 70s finally pursuing her artistic dreams after decades of putting everyone else first, a middle-aged teacher rediscovering her voice through abstract painting, a young woman who'd found the strength to leave an emotionally abusive relationship through the support of our community. Nathan stepped up to the microphone, looking nervous but determined. "When my mother first showed me her collage artwork, I completely misunderstood. I thought she was trying to make me feel guilty about our relationship." He paused, looking at me with genuine admiration. "Instead, she was showing me what it means to be brave enough to reclaim your own life." He turned toward me, holding out a small package wrapped in handmade paper. This is from all of us at Community Canvas. Inside was a beautiful new artist's portfolio case, but instead of being filled with evidence of sacrifices made, it contained cards, letters, and notes, dozens of them, from people whose lives had been touched by our program. "Read the last one," Olivia whispered, squeezing my shoulder. I opened the final envelope to find Nathan's distinctive handwriting. "Dear Mom, you taught me that true strength isn't found in holding on to pain or resentment, but in knowing when to let go of what's holding you back. When you walked away from being just my mother and reclaimed being Vanessa the artist, you showed me how to walk towards something better in my own life. I'm proud to be part of Community Canvas's story. I'm even prouder to be your son. Love, Nathan." The room filled with spontaneous applause as I hugged him tightly, both of us crying unashamedly now. "Okay, enough happy tears for one day," Olivia announced, her own eyes suspiciously moist. "We've got achievements to celebrate and futures to plan." As program graduates mingled with local gallery owners, school administrators, and community leaders, I stood before the collaborative mural with a sense of wonder. Each piece reflected its creator's unique journey: broken chains transformed into jewelry, barren landscapes blooming with unexpected color, cages with open doors, birds taking flight. "Ready to add your own piece to the community masterpiece?" Nathan asked, offering me a brush. I dipped it carefully in rich blue paint, adding my contribution: a simple open door with golden light streaming through from the other side. "Perfect," Olivia nodded approvingly. "Now, about expanding the program to the West Side Community Center. Already planning our next phase?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in decades. "Always," she grinned, pulling out her ever-present notebook. "The waiting list for our workshops keeps growing every week." I looked around at the room filled with possibility: my son helping a small girl mix colors at the children's table, Olivia enthusiastically networking with potential donors, participants from all walks of life connecting over shared experiences and creative expression. This was more than personal revenge or individual redemption. This was a quiet revolution unfolding, gentle but powerful, personal yet universal, unstoppable in its authentic momentum. One canvas, one person, one honest expression at a time. I picked up my brush again, feeling its familiar weight like an extension of my hand. There was still space on our community mural, still stories waiting to be told, still lives ready to be transformed through creative expression. And this time, I wasn't walking away from anything painful or limiting. I was walking confidently toward everything meaningful and possible.